Authority meeting, and so we're going to go into that meeting first, and then we'll move into our County Commission meeting. So as we're now in the Municipal Building Authority meeting, we have two items on our agenda. The first one is to approve the minutes. Any concerns with the minutes or corrections? Motion to be in order.
Move that we approve the minutes of the March 27th meeting for the Municipal Building Authority of Utah County.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second to approve the minutes as stated number 1 on the agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 3-0. Number 2 is to execute a form, and I just have one question on this. We did this back in March, so do we have to do it twice a year? Okay. I just saw that we already approved it. Seemed kind of redundant that we're doing it again, but if we have to do it twice a year, so be it. Any questions on it?
Nope.
Okay, a motion to be in order.
Move that we approve and authorize President Lee to execute the Form 8038 CP as stated number 2.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve agenda item number 2 as stated. All in favor say aye.
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 That passes 3-0.
Has a good sound to it, by the way.
Funny. Okay. We probably need a motion to adjourn out of this meeting.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
The motion and a second to adjourn out of this meeting. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are now out of that meeting. We'll take 1 second to change the recording and
Bless you.
move into our next meeting. Okay, we are now in our Board of Commissioners meeting this morning. Thank you for being here. And as always, we start with a prayer, a reading of thought, and the Pledge of Allegiance. And we're looking to see if those in the audience would like to volunteer to participate with us in that. Are there any volunteers? Pledge is taken. Prayer, reading, or thought is still open. Okay, come on up. We'll do the prayer first, yeah. Prayer, reading, or thought first. Robert?
Our Father in heaven, we are grateful for this opportunity that we can meet at the Commissioners' meeting and for the faithfulness of those who are involved and the prayers on our behalf. And we're grateful for liberty and freedom and for inalienable rights and for the balance between what the state has imposed upon citizens and what these good individuals here are trying to work out in behalf of the good of the citizens. And we pray that we'll make good decisions in this meeting. In the name of the Savior, Jesus Christ, amen.
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 Repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you for participating in that part of our meeting. A couple housekeeping items there's opportunity to speak with the public as we get to agenda items. If you'd like to come up and state your name, that would be fantastic as we get to those items. And of course, there'll be general comment at the end, or general public comment at the end. But beforehand, we have a public hearing before we start into our agenda, or organize our agenda. And we have a public hearing to discuss amending and increasing the 2017 Utah County budget. And so we are now going to open up that meeting to the public. If there are any comments, there's a couple items that we have on there that we're limited to, and we usually open up the budget for reasons where either there's not money in a certain account, and in this case, and we can talk about it later as we get to it. But there's one area in which we have accounting, we have revenue on one side, but we don't have a line item for expenses, and so to do that properly, we have to open it up for public comment. Any concerns there? Okay. Okay, come on up.
I'll be brief. My name is Robert J. Stevens. I'd like to see a small amount of the budget allocated to repairing the website for the health department. Most of the links to their code doesn't work. Clicking on them results in a page that isn't there, not found. It wouldn't take much money to do that, and so I'd like to understand the code, but I have to be able to read the code.
They, just to address that, I believe we budgeted for that, and they went through an RFP. I don't know if it's still ongoing to continue fixing. So it's actually in process.
I'd be happy to do it. It would take me 6 minutes as a programmer, so I'll do it for free. Let me know.
Wow, there you go, Ralph. You know, Robert. Okay. All right. Any other comments while we're in the public hearing part of this discussion? Okay, seeing none, can we have a motion to close that public hearing?
So moved?
Second?
We have a motion to close our public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 3-0. All right. Now we'll move on to building our agenda. We have, on the consent agenda, we have 10 items. I don't have any items to pull off of consent. Are there others?
There's on number 1, I believe there's a clarification change. We need to change the name on the signee to read the chair of Utah County Commission. Is that correct, Paul? I believe. Right.
Yeah, let's,
I think that right now, it says the title of the signer is the purchasing manager, or something
Yes.
like that. Just needs to be changed to the chair.
I kind of liked it the other way.
One less paper to sign, right?
Yeah.
Just put it on DocuSign.
Okay, fair enough. So with that change, is there any others on consent?
No.
Okay, so with that understanding, those will be on consent. Going to our regular agenda, everything will be moved to consent except for what we are going to pull off for discussion. And I'd like discussion on number 5, 6, 7, and 9. Are there others?
Just a quick clarification on 3.
3, okay.
It's just a simple question, and Rob, I was looking for you out in the, forget you moved today. This is not the issue that we're meeting about this afternoon, just to verify, right? This is, okay. I just wanted to make sure.
Yes, that's my understanding.
So did you want to?
No, no, I'm fine with it. I just wanted to make sure that, yeah,
Okay.
This would just allow the staff to work
right.
with this Mutual Movement Hall to look at a contract and negotiations on that, so.
Yeah. And although on this one, I mean, it shows an expense and is an expense, but we're looking at some savings there.
Yes.
Correct. Overall would be
Overall.
savings.
Yeah. Okay.
I did have one wording clarification on number 10 to add.
Okay.
Oh, I thought you held 10 for discussion. Oh, yeah, no, I
10, okay.
actually, well, yeah. I was just gonna ask, actually, the commission, I don't necessarily need to have another discussion on it. Maybe if we either continue or strike this, agenda item for the sheer fact that we have the items in planning commission currently. And so just kind of seems inconsequential to have an ordinance when we have that going on. And so I just kind of wanted to let that part play out before we did anything.
On the grazing one?
I'm happy to take action on this one today.
I think I'd rather just take action today. It's all right.
That'd be my preference.
I'll make sure my notes are right.
with the,
Oh,
changes.
yeah, I'm still opposed to it, so I just like to say,
But we'll hold it for discussion.
there's no reason for me to discuss it, because I'm always opposed to regulations by government.
Okay, so with that, are there any comments on the ones that we have moved to consent? Okay, which item on consent did you wanna,
Okay, then let's hold it for discussion.
on number 10 itself? Let's see, hold on, let me find out which one is consent, number 10.
No, he meant regular agenda item 10 that we just moved to consent.
That's not
Right.
consent.
Oh, it's not on consent. Yeah, we'll get to that one. Yeah, it's been held for discussion. Okay. Any other comments on the consent, the ones that we moved to consent? I know sometimes it gets confusing. So the ones that if you're looking at this list, the ones that we've pulled off for discussion is number 5, 6, 7. No,
Yeah.
we left 7 on consent, didn't we?
Nope.
Okay. 5, 6, oh, that's right, sorry. 5, 6, 7, 9, and 10. Those will be the ones that we'll have discussion on. Okay, let's move to number 5. This one's to approve and authorize the commission chair to sign the subdivision improvement warranty agreement for Robert Stevens subdivision. We had some discussion last week, and it all centered around
$25.
$25.
Hey, we
Or
deal
zero.
with big dollar amounts. Richard Nelson, Public Works Director. We had some discussion last week about needing to bond for the warranty portion of a subdivision monument that was placed as part of the subdivision in consultation with the attorney's office. Felt like that was the appropriate way to go. So it would be the recommendation to change it to do the $25 warranty bond. The monument is in place, but felt like we needed to have the warranty for that. Is that anything
Yeah.
else, Robert?
Robert Moore, County Attorney's Office. You asked me to look into this. I did last night and determined that I could not find a statute that said we couldn't do it. Our ordinance requires us to warranty for all the work. And so we've discussed maybe dealing with that in the subsequent amendment, because this seems to be kind of a small potatoes, if you will, a monument issue. It's either there or it's not. And if it fails or it's removed or destroyed, we have a different ordinance, the county code, put in to protect that we can come after that issue. But in our land use ordinance, it does require us to bond for these things, and for all things, really. And so that's why it's here. I think it's kind of, we're stuck right here to have to do it, but it would cost $25, Mr. Stevens. I'm sorry about that, but I didn't find a state statute that was referenced that would say we can't do this. So if I found that, then certainly I would have not recommended it. But given that our ordinance does require it, I said we have to do it.
So
So I would do it by
the 25
interlineation.
is- The
Yeah.
25 is,
Just applies
in
to the
our-
warranty.
I know, but that's in our, I mean, where do we get the 25?
It's in our ordinance. It requires 10%, and
And the
the
monument
cost is
valued at
$25, or excuse me, $250 for the installation of a monument.
Monument, yes.
That's why you get $25. 10% of 25, 250. Keep saying that. 10% of 250 is 25. So yes, we could make that change, but my guess is Mr. Stevens wants to go forward today to get his project done, as opposed to going back to our planning commission and going through our process.
Yeah.
I think he's been through our process before, and I'm sure he wants to get done today, so.
Yes, because,
Is that true? Okay.
And everything's ready to go with the exception of this document here, so.
okay, let's move on it.
I move that we approve and authorize the commission chair to sign the subdivision improvement and warranty agreement as stated in regular agenda item number 5
Second.
That's with the $25.
with the $25 warranty bond.
All right, I got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 That passes 3-0. Okay, number 6 is to approve adopt a resolution amending and increasing the 2017 Utah County budget. And let's have, Ryan, will you address this one?
I didn't receive any additional information, but I do know that we had a couple items. One was for a unforeseen expense that involved equipment damage in the kitchen. And then the other, as you mentioned, was just getting the right things in the right fund. So that's essentially what we're doing, is just opening it for those limited purposes to do that. But I apologize, I don't have the exact information in front of me.
And that, there's two items. There's the mosquito abatement one.
Yes.
In which we need to go forward on, and the other one is where we have revenue on one side that's already in there, but to spend that revenue, all we have to do, we don't have the expense, a line item on the other. Is that's
Correct.
as I
Yeah.
understand it?
So there were, there's actually 3 pieces of equipment in the kitchen that were original construction items that have failed, unforeseen, but they're about 21 years old. Life expectancy usually is about 8 to 12 years. They're very expensive. One's a dishwasher and the other is the bakery oven. I think they total about $271,000 between the two of them.
Yes. Okay.
And then on the mosquito abatement, the health department in budgeting this last year budgeted to an amount that they've been using, and because of the weather, we've had an inordinate amount of need this year, and so that's why they've asked for an increase to keep up with the.
Yeah, that's the unanticipated.
Yes.
And that one was, so we had, first one was 200 and, I can't remember the dollar figure.
271 is what he said.
271.
271.
271, and the mosquito abatement one was? Around 19,000. So those two is what we're looking at, and increasing the budget. Or, I know it's increasing the budget, it's not really increasing the budget on the one, it's just being able to expend the one side, the 271.
Correct.
And then the other one, we would have to increase there. So that's what we're doing.
Yep.
Okay, any other discussion on that? Comments? Okay, motion to be in order.
Move that we approve and adopt the resolution amending the budget as stated in regular agenda item 6.
Second?
I got a motion and a second to approve the resolution as stated in number 6. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That passes 3-0. Number 7, we are looking at the adopted order for the special meetings for the Board of County Commissioners. And to let you know, when we do our budget cycle this year, these will all be on these dates that are listed in here. They will be live streamed. They'll be in this meeting, or they'll be in this room.
I don't know why my thing's playing all of a sudden.
That was dramatic.
Dramatic.
Yeah. I touched the budget and.
And so they're listed, and we're gonna have those on those times, on those dates, and I just wanted everyone to know that during our budget process, it's open for the public to come in, to view, to watch, to see how we make budget sausage. It's always funny when it's somebody else, right?
Yep.
And so we just want to make sure and put that out there. And that's what this item is for, to call those special meetings. You'll have the commissioners here. There will be decisions made. There will be decisions this is the process that we make to spend money. And so we want to make sure that you knew about that as we have that here.
Mr. Chair, also as a reminder to the public, they will see another one of these come up, because when we go through the second round, and we've gone through with the clerk auditor, we will also put another round of potential meetings on this list. So there could potentially be this again,
Yes.
in addition.
Yep. So you can watch the process as we go through. Is there a question? Oh,
We can definitely
could.
publish that.
Yeah, we can publish that too. She was just asking about for which departments are coming in on those on those.
We'll make
those
sure we
dates.
put them on the website, on the homepage.
You should be able to see those too. In case there's a specific department you'd like to view or watch. Okay, any other questions or
Nope.
motion?
I move that we adopt regular agenda item number 7.
With the updated order, right?
With the update, yes, with the
Okay. Second?
updated order.
Got a motion and a second to adopt the order to call a special meetings as stated in number 7. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That passes 3-0. Okay, this, number 9, is to adopt a resolution, the Board of County Commissioners, to acknowledge the constitutional, this is the 6th Amendment that we have in the way of indigent defense. And I just want to state this, as it's been said over and over, I didn't know this until recently, but Utah County is the example of how to do it the right way in the state of Utah. And because of that, the state wants to partner a little bit more with us and maybe expanding our reach and also to keep it going in the right direction. And so they would like us to send in a request for some grant funding, which we will have to match. And so a couple questions I have the application sitting on my desk to do this. The question is we have not gone through our budget process yet. There's a big number on that we'd have to match over 2 years, and we haven't actually had discussion on that matching portion of it. So, Robert, if we adopt this resolution today, which as I read down through it was our intent to seek it, does that lock us into that number, or can we still go through our budget process to adjust if needed? I just want to see if there's flexibility there.
I'm trying to pull that resolution up to see if there's an obligation on the part of the county funding source obligation. If there is,
It's not
then-
in that resolution.
Not in the resolution,
Not in
it's
the
in the
resolution.
application.
In the application.
And the application requires you to sign, the resolution requires you to sign the application.
Yes, we'd have to sign it, well, let me get to the
Let me
resolution,
pull
I
it
think
up.
it's,
I'm working on pulling it up, so.
Number
This
1,
is-
it says that we intend to apply for grant funding to supplement its indigent defense system as outlined. And that number 2 is the resolution takes effect immediately as the therefores.
Tom, do you know the date that application has to be turned into for sure?
It looks like from the resolution itself, it's just obligating you, or you're obligating yourself to apply for grant funding. And that, the second part of that is that the resolution takes effect immediately. I mean, that's the only 2 things in that resolution, honestly.
And the question was?
When's it due, the application?
I believe 12 October is when they want to consider it.
So you have time to continue it if you want to. I know that Dave Shawcroft will be back next Tuesday. This was his item
Well,
he put on there, but
why
you
would we
certainly- you
continue
certainly
it?
You certainly can do
Yeah.
that.
I don't
You
know if we
certainly
need
go
to
forward.
continue it, I just want to know if we have the flexibility to talk about the budget part of it, because we
I
haven't
think
had that
you should do
discussion.
that before you file an application, I would think,
Right.
so. It sounds like you have some time to do that, but not a lot. So.
Yes, okay. Thanks, Tom. Okay, that satisfies it for me in the way of the questions for giving us flexibility. We at least have the opportunity to
Yep.
look at that number. I mean, that number's 700,000, so
Yep.
big number.
And we-
Um,
that's-
I'll move then that we adopt the resolution as stated in number 9.
Second?
Get a motion and a second to adopt the resolution as stated in number 9. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 3-0. Okay. To number 10. Number 10 is to adopt an ordinance to amend sections 2.2 and 3.25. And this is with the And I know, Commissioner, if you wanted to talk about the one-word change,
Yes.
and then we'll take public comment on that.
So the slight verbiage adjustment would come in number 14. In dealing with the half-mile radius of an existing dwelling or area of agricultural production. Following that, for clarification, I'd like to have it read in Utah County. So it'd be a portion of operation located within 1/2 mile of an existing dwelling in Utah County or existing area of active agricultural production in Utah County shall meet the requirements listed below, so that when we come into cross-jurisdictional issues, that there's clarification that it applies for Utah County.
So that if it's on a border between two different counties.
If it's on a border between two counties or something like that where these things can go cross-jurisdictionally, it's clear that it's applying to the residents or the agricultural area within Utah County. So it's just a clarificational point there.
And Mr. Chairman, so this would not apply to any gravel operations outside Utah County as well? So.
Right. Yeah, this was just for a clarification if we ran into a cross-jurisdictional issue.
No, but as we learned from staff, that once one organization does it, everybody else tries to copy it. So I'm just offended that we would limit and basically condemn one industry when the reality is part of the problem in this county on the county roads that they're complaining about is the poor condition of the roads, yet farmers don't pay a full share, therefore they're not paying for the roads, and here we are punishing one industry. So I know I promised to repeat all of my stuff from last week, but I'm not. It's not worth it. To me, this is my campaign issue as far as I promise to keep everybody free and never impose regulations on them ever. I believe the residents of West Mountain and surrounding areas want no new pits. They'd like the pits to quit, but that's not going to happen. They're under there. They would like safer roads. That's what I've heard them say. So I'm still in favor of all that. So, but this ordinance, I will be running one against the farmers for dust and contamination and digging too deep because everybody's talking about water. It works both ways. That's all I'm saying. You can't keep unearthing ground, putting pesticides in the ground, turning it up, and then thinking, oh, no, it's all the gravel pits that are contaminating the water. It can't be one and not the other. So, just it's not even scientifically possible.
Okay, how many people would like to make comment on this, one, two? Not to hurry, one less. So I got three, looks like. Okay, 3, 6, 9. So let's give.
Robert raised his hand in the back.
Oh, you did too? Okay. 12. Let's give time for this, so you can talk to this amendment here. And it's 9:30 right now, and so quarter till. How about 15 minutes? That'll give us a little bit more time to give everybody an opportunity for 3 minutes. So if you'd like to come up, we'll take public comment till 15 till. Nope, it'll just be, come on up. Just be aware that others are speaking too, and we're gonna go till 15 till. Okay. Public comment.
Parley Hall. I live on the corner of 7800 South, 3200 West, Benjamin, Utah. I've been a licensed real estate agent since '73, licensed appraiser since '93. I'd like to address dust, traffic, property values. I think there's a lot of emotion being vented on this subject without the facts. I think that fruit farmers have presented the facts, okay? And I accept that, but if we're talking about dust, let's manage dust, okay? It reminds me of Bear's Ears. You're going to eliminate stuff to protect somebody else's interest. Every time you change the zoning, you change value. It can go up or it can go down. I have a classic example, a listing I have on the other side of West Mountain. 6 years ago, people wanted to develop a subdivision. They found out that somewhere in time, they changed the zoning from mining and grazing to RA5, but they didn't allow enough accesses. They only had one deeded and one easement, so they couldn't subdivide it. Then gravel people approached us. They tested the non-agricultural ground, the ground on the washboard, you know, Bonneville wash line, identified millions of tons of high-grade sand and gravel. Cannot use it because the zoning is not allow it, and the county would not change the zoning back to mining and grazing. We're talking about tens of millions of dollars of devaluation of one person's assets. Okay? Property values by having gravel pits. I built a 6,000 square foot house across from Valley, gravel pit, Santaquin. I was going to prove that they were devaluing my house when they decided to reopen that pit and finish their permitted excavation from. I studied every gravel pit from Whitaker's in Willard and Brigham City to Mona. Could not prove any data where a gravel pit devalued the value. I'm going to show you the difference. Salem, they're still building houses right by the gravel pit. The classic example is Santaquin. I had a client on 3200 West. I appraised his house. He called me back 6 months. Can you sell it? Yes. Can we list it for that value I appraised? No, let's add it 10%. I said, okay, it'll sell for whatever it's worth. We sold the house. We never had one question about traffic. 15 showings and nobody asked about traffic on 3200 West. I showed him around the county. I said, why don't you try Santaquin? No, it's too far. I said, have you tested how long it takes you to drive from Santaquin to East Bay compared to West Mountain to East Bay? You can get there faster. You can drive from Mona to East Bay as fast as you can get from West Mountain to East Bay. It's location. Took them to Santaquin, showed them a building lot. They said, man, this is beautiful. I said, what do you see? It's a great view. I said, there's a railroad right at the bottom of your lot. You see over there, that's Santaquin City's gravel pit. Right next to it's Kurt Greenhalgh's gravel pit. Right below you is this pile of gravel, Sun Rock's old gravel pit they're now storing in. And across that road over there is Sun Rock's active gravel pit. Oh, okay. They bought it. I talked to them 6 months later. They love it. I said, well, how do you like the noise from the train? We don't hear as much noise from that train as we did when we lived in Benjamin and the train was over a half a mile away. I'm telling you, the facts are not there to argue value. Property values in West Mountain went down 7, 8, 9, and 10. And farm ground went down almost 50% because people quit speculating and the banks changed them lending factors on it. Values in town have recovered. Pure farm ground has stayed the same, but it's still much more than what crops can pay for. Another example, 73, I lived by Mountain View High School, across the street, fruit farmer. He kept selling 10 acres, going to West Mountain, buying 40, got 160. His grandson just sold the last piece of ground. Guess where he went? Right beside Keegley Quarry. Bought 40 acres. You know what he's going to do with it? Plant trees, because he's in the tree business. Now, I don't argue that lime dust doesn't have an economic effect, but it's not prohibitive. So if we're talking about dust, manage the dust. If we're talking about values, look at the facts. If you're talking about roads, hey, those are the least used roads in Utah County. And I live on the busiest road. My house is 50 feet from the blacktop. Those trucks do not bother me at all. You can put another 100 trucks a day on that road, and I'm happy with it. When I see them trucks, I say, hey, that guy's making a house payment. That guy's kid's going to college. That guy's kid's going to camp. I mean, let's get real.
I wonder if we've got
Okay.
others that want to make comments too.
I know this
Time.
is out of order, but I'm gonna say amen.
Thank you.
Okay, others?
Hi, I'm Julie Sainsbury, and I live out on West Mountain. And before I begin, I just want to express my appreciation for everything that you guys have done, for the work and the study and all it takes to do this legislative process. I've been thinking about these ordinances this week and the need or the not need for them. My education's in nursing, and when we do a care plan, you do assess, you plan, you implement, and you evaluate. If you assess and realize there's an issue and a problem, and then you say, okay, we've assessed, good, and you go about doing something else and you don't do the other steps, nothing happens. If you assess and plan and then decide, okay, we've got it here, I think that's all the further we need to go. Nothing happens. You've got to implement, and then when you implement, there's always the process of needing to evaluate when you're done. Similar to this legislative process, you recognize and you assess if there's a problem, what needs to be done. You make a plan, and then you implement that plan. Now, maybe that plan might have to be tweaked. Maybe there might have to be some adjustments. That's the evaluation part. And then you come back and you make whatever adjustments that you need. But if you don't go through the process, nothing changes. So, last week it was brought up how the planning department, community development, how they had looked into other areas that had implemented some local ordinances and regulations. And you've got to ask yourself, do they not live in the state of Utah? These same ordinances that supposedly are going to regulate the pits in all of Utah County and that are going to be okay for the health and the welfare and the safety of its citizens, did they not have the same thing? Why did they feel the need? Were there deficiencies? Were there some instances where the citizens needed more than what the state had to offer? As a county, you can fill in that void. You can fill in the deficiencies where they're at. It's been said that this is a one-pit issue. This is not a one-pit issue. As I've tried to educate myself on this, I've read minutes from meetings that were concerning the pit that's in front of American Fork Canyon. I've heard in these own meetings myself not only reference to one pit, but other pits in their effect on the agriculture and the community and everything else that is there. So I think everything has been said that needs to be said and the reasons why, as members of the South Utah County Community Voice, felt like there needed to be some local control over the issue. And I think that's really the issue here, local control. Are we implementing too much? Are we regulating too much? Where does the state have its say? Where does the local community have its say? But from what's been evident at the meetings here, public input, some may call it public clamor, I've heard it referred to, but why do you have an open public meeting if you're not looking for public input? And there's been many, many here that have expressed concerns and that have, pointed out the deficiencies in the system. And so I appreciate your consideration and looking into this. And we can't just talk about it. We need to plan it. We need to implement it. We need to evaluate it. We need to move forward and do something, because doing nothing keeps it exactly like it is. Thank you.
Yeah. I think there was a couple more. Go ahead.
My name is Paul Washburn with Clyde Companies. I know you have been working this past few weeks with Dave Callis in looking at some things that would moderate the proposed ordinance change. I agree with Mrs. Sainsbury that this is a very complicated issue. And there's so many ramifications to everything that is part of this. It's awful hard to throw something together in a week or 2 weeks or even a couple of months. It's really going to be a long-term solution for everything that comes about. Today you're probably going to adopt something. I hope if you do adopt something that it's with the idea that there's going to be some continued debate and working through individual issues so that they can be resolved. Gravel is a tough issue. It's real easy for me if the only thing I'm focusing on is a gravel truck driving down in front of my house to say it's horrible, it shouldn't happen, there should be a separate road for them, and there's maybe a separate planet for them to be on. Understand that. On the other hand, I want to go to a hospital that has got the absolute best facilities there are. I want my kids in the best schools that can be built. I want a house that I know is not going to fall down. I want to drive on roads that are safe. All of those things require gravel. And not just any piece of dirt you find, but specific types of gravel, specific chemical combinations that make that work. And unfortunately, you only find that where you find it. You know, we are approached by people occasionally and say, well, why don't you do all your mining out in the West Desert? Well, I guess you could ask the same question, why don't we do all the farming out in the West Desert? Well, because it doesn't work out there, and the minerals that we need aren't all found out there, and you run into problems with transportation that maybe create even a bigger problem than you're trying to cure. We've got to find something that works for everybody, and I think it's something that may take, you know, months and maybe even a year or so to be able to do it right. But we need to be careful as we start to regulate these industries that we don't create a problem that creates costs that are unacceptable, that throw a bigger burden on our taxpayers. It's interesting, I think it is 85% of the ground in Utah County doesn't even pay taxes. You know, it's on Greenbelt. We need to make sure that we don't create an even higher burden on those people that do pay taxes by increasing the cost of their ability to build homes, hospitals, roads, all of the other things that need to be done. It's a complicated issue. I'm glad I'm not up there trying to figure it out myself. But we've got to find something that works for everybody here. We don't want to come in an effort to protect one gravel pit or maybe even a couple, put ourselves in a position where we add a tax burden to our citizens here and maybe compromise the ability of what we can build. Thank you.
Thanks. We are out of time, but if it's okay to listen to others, are you fine with that? Okay. So others that would like to speak.
Hi, my name is Vernal Shepherd. I'm here to speak as a resident of Benjamin, not as somebody appointed at the sheriff's office. But one of the comments that Commissioner Graves made a couple of weeks ago, referring to if we make this an agricultural place, then the people are going to move in and not like the scent and the smell. And he was referring to Lehigh. I'd just like to point out to you guys that a good number of them meat farms have moved from Lehigh to this very vicinity. I have 3 of them around me now. I can't speak intelligently about what the noise does to the breeding of a mink, but I will tell you in the 17 years I've worked in this agency that we can no longer use sirens at the EVO range because of the mink farms out there. So it has to contribute something because obviously we've made exceptions to not make that noise out there. So it might be logical that this would be where you've talked about the orchards and the environment for the orchards, that maybe this is the spot of Utah County to have it be agricultural. And I'm not saying get rid of the mines that are there, but let's limit to what we have and control it, not continue to let it grow. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Let's keep in mind, for me, when everybody says limit to agricultural, that means you landlock yourself too. You can't have it both ways. We cannot change zoning and go against the general plan of the county if you want to say, okay, we're not going to do this, it's going to be agricultural, then when all of your kids come in and say, my parents didn't know what they're talking about, I want to sell this for millions of dollars and I want to sell and make the money. That is where our problem is. So you want a legislative fix on something that could be controlled. Nobody forces you to sell your land. Nobody. And so all of you guys that are talking about developments and stuff like this, it's all garbage, because technically I'll tell you who should be more offended at this commission than anybody right now. That's the residents of Alpine City. Because the reality is the residents of Alpine City, we have always told them, general plan, sorry, you want to do it, you annex, and this is against the general plan. And now all of a sudden we're carving out something that's against our general plan. Not only that, I'm also offended that we would have an ordinance, because this commission, since Commissioner Lee and I have been here, and even joining with Commissioner Ivy, has always had meetings where we have invited and had open houses with all the stakeholders. We've come and talked about that. We have never done that in this process yet. We have not brought all the gravel pit people together. We have not brought all the fruit farmers together. We've not brought all the residents. We haven't had that. So to me, this is premature. The other problem, going back to something that Julie, Mrs. Sainsbury said, that you have to think a little future, is every year for the last 2 years, and it'll be again this year, because I know every employee is going to wonder, what's the commission going to do on our pay increase? And every year, one of the things we discuss is COLA, cost of living. Cost of living increases are real. And every year, people come in here and speak out against the employees and tell the commission, do not give them an increase because they knew the job, blah, blah, blah. We don't want taxes to go up. And the reality is by regulating pits and increasing prices, you price everybody out. And so if we don't increase by closing down, regulating, and creating a higher price, we all see it with health care. It's the same thing. If you start regulating transportation, concrete, and everything, everybody's prices go up, and then everybody's taxes go up, because that's the only way you can fund the government. And then West Mountain residents won't have to wonder where their government is, because there won't be one. That's the reality of these kind of consequences. I know it's not going to happen tomorrow, but within the next 10 to 20 years, this is the kind of decision that will raise prices and change this county in a negative impact that might be hard to recover from. Until an election happens and you get 2 new people that come in and say, well, that was stupid, strike that ordinance, and that's all it takes. That's the ironies. Elections do have consequences. This is a bigger deal to residents of Utah County than anybody realizes. This is not just about a bus about hitting and killing, bus drivers being ran off the road by truck drivers, or truck drivers almost killing kids. This is a county issue. This is about regulating the whole county, because when you do it to one, the county cannot single out anybody. We have to play by the same rules. And I'm here to tell you, I understand the people in West Mountain, but what I hear you say is you want safe roads, you want your kids to be able to play and do the safe, normal things. I agree. We can do that. You also want no new pits. Well, we passed that already, and we sent that on for a future discussion. But this is a different step. This is a different step. This is literally like saying, okay, well, the roads aren't safe, so let's go ahead. The grocery store, you can be open from 5 to 7 a.m., but let's close during school hours. Let's go from 11 to 3, and then again from 6 to 8. Where do we stop? Where do we stop?
It's not in here. It's not in here. That's not on this amendment.
That's how it started.
But it's not in the current. It's not in current.
It's the legislative process is to work through those concerns.
Is there any more public comment, and then we'll pull it off? Public. Okay. Yes? Okay.
My name is Robert Stevens. I'd like to thank Vern and Greg for their contributions. Vernal is a neighbor of mine, even though I haven't had a chance to live there, but he's the most wise and practical individual I've ever met out there in the county, and I really enjoy learning from Vernal. And Greg's right. The more we regulate, the more we pick winners and losers, the more we discount free market principles and competition, which lowers prices, and we have to watch that all the time. It's a very hard thing to do. especially when everybody wants to use the force of government to go have government do what they want to do, not thinking what the consequences will be. One of the problems that we have out there that actually affects everything is that the land is used for a farmland, then its tax assessment is low. It sounds great, but that also means that farmers and people aren't able to borrow against their land as they would if it was buildable land. How do you balance that? Well, you could assess things high, but the taxes are low. Or you could declare it as buildable, so we can get loans against our farmland to go and address some of the issues of the commission, and then we can make some contributions ourselves. But when we go into banks and they say, hey, look, your land is assessed so low, not even comparable to the land values in the city, then you have to just go and what's the word for it? You have to put up as collateral your whole farm. And so for even small issues to get loans, you have to bet the whole farm on things, and that's uncomfortable for people who want, who are interested in thrift and so forth. And so we'd like to help you solve lots of things. We'd like to go contribute ourselves. We are concerned about ducks, about the dust and trucks who passed us when we're ready to make a left into our property and so forth. It's very scary when a truck will pass you on the other side of the road from behind you when you're trying to make a turn, and you wish that wouldn't happen, and you count your blessings when you weren't smushed to a pancake. But there are all sorts of issues, but I think it boils down to free agency, free markets, less control, less regulations at the expense of liberty. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think that's it, unless there's another. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the public comment there. Let's bring it back up here to the commission. I know you already had your opening statement. Any others, Commissioner Ivey?
Yeah, I just touched briefly. I believe the fundamental role of government is to protect life, liberty, and property. And to accomplish that purpose, the government, especially in America, has established rights to ensure that people have their individual rights protected. And one of those individual rights is a property right. And within a general guideline, I love the concept of being able to take your property and do with it as you please. But like with all rights, there also comes responsibility. You cannot exercise a right if that right causes harm or damage that's documentable to another individual. When that happens, we have conflicting interests or rights, and we have a role and responsibility within government to govern, to try and set reasonable standards that allow individuals to continue to exercise their rights while minimizing the negative effects of that exercise on another individual. I believe in this particular case, we have an instance where an increased activity has created a conflict in an area where the exercising of a just right has caused damage to a very viable and important industry in our county. And so we have a responsibility to try and find a proper balance to make sure that both of them can continue to exercise their rights while providing protection to both entities. As a result, we've heard presentations from fruit growers. We've gone on tours to gravel pits to listen to them. I personally sat in my office with the owners of multiple pits to discuss the variances of this ordinance and worked through a legislative process to where we've amended, ratified what was an original proposal to try and find that proper balance so that we can protect individual rights and of both entities with the least impact possible. For me, I personally feel like we've gotten to that point on this particular ordinance, and I really appreciated the comments about we institute and then we evaluate. As we work through this process, I am sure there will be instances that come up on various sides that show where we could maybe craft and improve legislation. And for me, that's the beauty of the American process, is that ability to take that, to evaluate, and to make necessary changes as we work through the process of governing. And that process of governing should always keep in mind doing our best to try and protect the rights of all involved.
Can I respond to that real quick? Sure. So the only problem I have with your statements are, the problem is that when we start thinking that owning property is a right, then we're like the federal government. So I watched the Bernie Sanders debate last night with Senator Graham, and he believes health care is a right. It's not. The founding fathers, when they set up the inalienable rights are the ones given from God. And the right to own property is not a right, it's a privilege. And that's the problem when we start protecting privileges and we excuse them for rights and we start thinking that we're a legislative body and we know better. That's when the problem is. We are duly elected and swore to uphold. And the founding fathers believed that if you elected God-fearing men to enact the will of the people, we are not thinking in broader terms of 610,000 or 15,000 residents. We're thinking for 10,000, maybe. That's the problem for me, is it is not a God-given right. Property is not an inalienable right, it's a privilege. It's my privilege to work, to serve, to do all these things. My God-given inalienable rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Pursuit of happiness is the privilege to buy land, not to protect it, and therefore to condemn somebody else's rights. The Supreme Court already ruled that corporations are people. So those people's rights to own property, using your term, now we're limiting their rights. So where do you stop? And we can keep calling it a legislative process, but the reality is any time you limit and remove something that somebody could do, you have taken away freedom and taken away their right or ability to do something.
I've got to ask a question for understanding on my part. If it's a privilege, who grants that privilege?
The government.
For property?
For protection. That's the difference. It's not a right, it's a privilege.
Owning property is a privilege?
It is a privilege, because if it's a right,
by the government?
if it's a right, no, protected, not granted, protected, because if it's a right, then everybody, the government just divides it up and gives it. A right means something we have to take, to me.
No, well, I disagree, but.
It's not a right. Nobody is entitled to land. But you're entitled to life and liberty.
Okay. All right. I would just like to, look at, maybe if I can go back a little bit and define a few things in my mind, from my perspective. There's a lot that came on this at the very beginning, and sometimes I feel like things have, as they move through the process, some of the stuff that's on there continues with it, even though it's taken off. This document, this proposed text amendment, is, in my opinion, vastly different than when it was first proposed in many ways. We still have on there the definitions of agriculture and the stormwater, and I want to point out on stormwater, this one here has been put in place. It's new, but it's been put in place because if we do not have the ability to protect, and I'll use the word protect, government does protect somebody else's property, then we have problems and conflicts. Then becomes who is the biggest dog in town. And in this case, I think stormwater protection is one of those applications in which it is totally appropriate for us to look at. Because if we look at because if it crosses the fence and goes into somebody else's property, we have a problem. And so that's where I think government, proper role of government, can stand and say, here's the guidelines, here's what we do. That one's listed here as a definition. I just wanted to, on the ordinance that we already have in place, we already have the intent and the scope. There's conditions in here. And there's a lot of conditions in here. If you read above, sometimes we get so focused on what we're changing that we forget what's already up there and already in place. We've got zoning in place right now. We talk about roads. we talk about the infrastructure, we talk about dust and what that means. Right now, it says dust generated in the extraction and processing of the earth products shall be kept under control by the operator in keeping and extracting area. That's something that we're using the force of government to do. That's already in there. This is not something we're talking about. It's already in there. And to maintain the roads in the pit and to load trucks watered down, placing berms or landscape screens to protect from the prevailing winds. Those are already in this. They're already there. They talk about cuts and fills. There's pit extraction. Again, things that are already in this that they're required to do. Then there's travel plans. They're supposed to have, the applicant shall submit an accurate travel route site plan. That's in there. The applicant shall submit a traffic analysis. That's in there, already in there, been in there. The applicant shall submit a travel road analysis. That's in there, talking about weight, talking about thickness, talking about quality, talking about features. And it continues to go, and the county attorney has, county engineer, big difference, has to review these, and then we get down to the ones that are being reviewed. And this one is, number 11 says the applicant shall submit and receive approval from the county engineer for a stormwater pollution protection plan. That's the SWIP plan. To me, when I look at property, anytime we have water running off into another or possible contamination to another, there's got to be a plan in place. And I think that's appropriate for us to have those kind of plans in place, because we need to defend the property right owners that are adjacent as well. They need to have that. That's one of our proper roles. The operations, some of these operations, they're already, like number 12, I see that above. The operation shall comply with the applicable requirements of the Utah County Health Department. That's a given. That's already above. That's a restatement. Then we get to 14, and 14 is something that's a little bit new. And it's talking, what it's doing is defining some of these with the half mile on existing dwellings in Utah County, as Commissioner Ivey put there. So it's putting a virtual fence in place, which I think is appropriate. Fences make good neighbors. I know my neighbor next, when we first knew, we had no fences, and they had their house behind us. It was an older couple, and they loved to have all these little ornamental things up there, and my kids were always over there breaking them. It was expensive. I said, let's get a fence up. It'd be a lot cheaper. It gives good, it gives fences good neighbors. That's kind of what this intent is, to give a fence basis in which we say these things need to happen. We got the SWIP plan, and then I want to go down to the other ones. And I want to read this specifically. It says the applicant shall, remember the word shall, submit an operation plan which shall be approved by the county, again, shall be approved by the county commissioner, which addresses the following. Hours of operation. Doesn't say what the hours of operation are. It says hours of operation, noise mitigation, landscaping, dust containment, and lighting. So if you read that, it's a checkoff box. It's not sitting there and pushing the thumb of government in this to the point to where it's uncomfortable. I've had discussions in this last week with DAQ. I've had discussions with the pit operators, and one of the pit operators said, you know what, I think if we had one of these, we may do something where it's a 2 rotations, where we do an 8-hour and then another 8-hour, and that's maybe what would put in place. And some of the nighttime would be different. That's what they might put into their plan. I don't know what their plan is, but it's not the reach of the long arm of government in there trying to say this is what will happen. This is what we're asking is that they will be considerate enough to look at these and say this is what we are planning on doing. So again, if I can go back, a lot of the stuff we already have in place, it's already being regulated by the state, by the county health department. The SWIP plan is new and I think appropriate, and then there's a virtual fence around there with them proposing a plan, which I think is totally reasonable And the ones that I've talked to on the gravel pit plan, gravel pit operators say that it's a checkoff box for them to go through, maybe a couple more hours as they go through the application process. I don't see this as being overreaching. I think this is actually being protective of all property owners and being considerate of all property owners that are there. When you cross the fence with dust, when you cross the fence with water, when you cross the fence in the way of degrading the roads, we have that in there in the way of roads, sufficient roads, then those things become a cost that need to be adjusted. And so as I see it, is it in
But
place
let's be
right
careful,
now?
because farm equipment on the roads, are we seriously gonna go back and every time a farmer drives a swather? I mean, that's the slippery slope, and that's literally what I hear you saying is, anytime that happens and there's damage in somebody else's rights, then we need to step in. Seeing what I heard you saying, so if you'll please clarify why
Yeah,
you're
sure.
doing that for me. When you talk to these pits and you say, we're going to change potentially our operations, you can say that's not mandated. Why are they changing? When we pass an ordinance, that is the definition of regulation, to act as an authority to create a change. And that's why they're changing. That's regulation.
It does not it does not make it mandatory. It makes it optional for them. All they need to do is.
So I guess that's my bigger point. If it's not mandatory, why are we wasting our time? The residents of West Mountain want safety changes and health changes.
And
This doesn't do any of that.
some of the pit operators that I've talked to, they agree, a few have agreed, that there are concerns and problems in which they think there needs to be some adjustment. But adjustment in a reasonable manner that affords them to go forward too is appropriate. And they have said that to me. They said, you know what, there is. And I think that we could probably be better here, or we could help here in this area to, because if one does it, like you said, if one does it, the others will probably do it too. They may do it.
And hopefully this is a nudge that gets that to occur.
It's not a force. It's, I mean, the SWIP plan, I think, is one that has to be in place, because I think that is protecting boundaries in the way of pollution for water. It needs to be in place. That one I totally agree with, because that's protecting property for downstream.
I'm not disagreeing with that. My only question is then, why doesn't this commission, if it's such good sound principles, why don't we make that part of the general plan, apply that across the board? Doesn't matter who you are, farmer, business owner, gravel pit operator, stormwater is stormwater, pollution is pollution. That's all I'm saying. If it's such good sound principle, then it's good for every resident of Utah County. That's all I'm saying.
Farmers do have
Regulations. Both industries are way regulated. I already know
Yeah.
that. But what I'm saying is, we are carving out an ordinance. I don't know why we don't apply it across the whole county.
How would you, and propose how that would happen?
I wouldn't. That's why I wouldn't do this in the first place. But that's my point is, we are punishing. We are punishing one. We're creating an ordinance in a mining that is different than everybody. What we are saying, we're free enterprise and business friendly, as long as you don't infringe on anybody's rights, okay, but only in this industry. That's what I'm failing to grasp. It is, your point isn't invalid. I'm just saying, if it's such sound principle, then let's make this across the board, so that everybody, they have all these protections in place.
Well, in my mind, proper government principles, when it comes to regulation, they have to pull back on where it is appropriate and where it is not. And so, if it's appropriate for, and now, if we were to drive to one extreme or the other, I don't know where we go. If we were to just turn it loose and say, free enterprise in the sense that anybody can do whatever they want, that turns into a certain form of anarchy.
Agreed.
Because then you have people that say, we've got the most manpower, we've got the most trucks, we've got everything else, but we're gonna take this road and no one else can ride on. We can't go that far. So there has to be an appropriate level of government intervention to keep our form of economic stability going that makes sense. And then this is where the competing rights come in. Safety on one side, and the ability to get your product to market on the other, down the roads. that's a conflict that we always are gonna deal with here. We deal with it on I-15, we deal with it on almost all the roads. There's conflicts that are gonna, so where's that balance come into place in which we say, okay, there, you know, if we go through again what we already have in place and look at the roads and look at the pavement and see what it is and say, if you're doing something new here in this area, these roads were built for this community with this in mind. And now you're gonna come in and you're gonna be putting more traffic on here, and not just light traffic, but heavy traffic. There's an expense that comes in place.
Sure, but again, who controls the roads, the size of the roads, the quality of the roads, and all that? We do.
Right, and the
So-
state, and, yeah.
So that's my point is Richard would love to have $10 million and go increase it, because if that's really that big, you know, and that's all I'm saying is, part of my problem is if it's such good sound principle, then like Mr. Washburn stated, then let's hold off a little bit and let's get together and maybe there is an answer, you know? I don't know.
I don't see, this is never written into absolute stone. It's written into a process that we can build on and change. Because we change it, we can always
I know, but
change
since we've been in office, and this is just going off memory, I don't know that we've ever decreased an ordinance. The more I was thinking about that the other day, I thought, oh, here I am preaching about less regulation. I've never proposed or cut any ordinance. We've only added to them. We've only added or increased the scope of government since we've been here.
Well, we've clarified.
We have
We
clarified.
can go
And I'm
back
not saying we've
and
infringed on
changed.
rights, but I'm just saying as a principle, we've never cut ordinances. We always add to them, and that's, you know.
Policies, I know we've changed a lot of
Sure,
policies.
we have. Yes, we have.
You know, for clarification.
And I think for the better.
You know, and it's a good discussion, because just like, and I'll just use a farmer's term, when you have your ditch going, when your watering system, and you have a ditch in place, there's a lot of times in which the weeds start to grow in, and they suck the water out, and that's the reason why you go down there and you clean the ditch, is so you can get the water to the right spots. And sometimes that's what happens with ordinances, is they keep growing inside.
And it's funny you said that, and that this really didn't. But I literally did have somebody come and complain to me from a resident of Orem over this issue. Because they said, why are farmers allowed to burn ditches when we already have poor air quality and I have to breathe that air in? See, so again, it starts, and it's not
It's actually regulated. You have to
So-
call in, report, get permission.
But we
It has
allow
to be
it.
on a proper day.
and the reality is
so-
wherever the wind's going, those particulate matters do stick with, I mean, we know. And so, again,
it's
where do you
regulated.
stop?
Well, but again, Greg, it's regulated.
And so are all these industries,
I can't
unfortunately.
I can't just do it on any day I want.
I mean, I remember one time we were looking at laws,
fine.
and there was some laws in place that if you read down through them, it'd just make you laugh, because they're not even common sense approached. But, and I think that's the process. If we want to look at the laws, and I'm not opposed to looking at the laws and saying that doesn't make any sense, we need to change that, cut that out, let's get it back. Again, on this one here, when it first came forward, it gave me a lot of pause. It really did, because of the balance between proper rule of government and private property and how we interact. And I feel like we're at a condition, at a spot right now in which the definitions are there, the SWIP plan is in place. We do have a kind of a virtual fence, if I could call it that. The other thing, the 11, 12, 13, they're all up above. I don't even worry too much about them. And then we do have, the ability to say, how are you going to work with the hours of operation and noise, knowing that you're in an area that people do sleep and people do live. So I feel comfortable where this is at. I'm not saying this is the end all. I'm saying this is probably a start, at least for discussion, but at least it gives a framework to move forward. Thoughts?
Let's vote. Let's
Sounds
get this 2-1 over with.
So I will move that we adopt regular agenda item number 10.
I will second to move forward.
With the noted changes of wording for adding in
With the
Utah County.
Okay.
And I will second.
And just to clarify, Mr. Chairman, that's the updated version.
Yes,
that was produced this week.
the updated redline version with the addition of the Utah County for clarification purposes.
Okay, I got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye?
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, I've got, that passes 2-1 with Commissioner Lee and
I
Commissioner.
would like to say something on the record since one of my.
Commissioner
Oh,
Lee
sorry.
and Commissioner Ivy on the ayes and Commissioner Graves on there.
And only because he's dressed as a deputy. When you come and you say you're here at the public, please make sure you're not on the clock, because if you represent yourself as a member of the public, not as a sheriff deputy. I just making sure, so. Where you sat here and shook your head at me, I will get a bunch of phone calls, I know I will. That's why I ask. So, I won't, I trust you to do it.
Okay. All right, I think that's the end. Let's look at,
The beginning, depending on how
oh,
you
the
look at it.
beginning of the end of the beginning, whichever way you want to look at it. We've got, it looks like we can strike number 11 and number 12, and we have 13 and 14 that are needed for closed meetings.
Your turn, my turn.
I'll go. So I'll move that we strike regular agenda items number 11 and 12.
Second.
Oh, I've got a motion and a second to strike number 11 and 12 from our regular agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye?
Aye. That passes 3-0.
Move that we approve and set a date, time, and location for a closed meeting to discuss the character, professional confidence, or physical or mental health of an individual or individuals for today's date at this location following the completion of the regular agenda.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second to approve and set a date, time, and location as stated number 13 on our regular agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 3-0.
I'll move that we approve and set a date, time, and location for a closed meeting for a strategy session to discuss pending or reasonably imminent litigation for today's date at this location following the completion of the regular agenda.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second to approve and set a date, time, and location as stated number 14 on our regular agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 3-0. I have no work session items. Is there any general public comment?
I was gonna say, Robert's here.
Yep, come on up.
Mr. Graves, I loved your comments, but I also would like, for the record, to go disagree on a couple publicly. Private property rights are mentioned in almost every state constitution in the Union, including Utah's. What Bill Lee said so eloquently, trying not to cause an argument, that if private property rights are not a right, then the government giveth, and they can also go and taketh away. So private property rights are a right, and private property rights existed before the formation of any government. And governments were formed to protect private property rights. It's true that when Jefferson penned the Declaration of Independence, and he said, he mentioned the pursuit of happiness, he knew that included private property rights because that was a given. Everybody knew that at the convention, and that's why it's mentioned in all the state constitutions. So the socialist agenda is to tell you that there are no private property rights, and private property rights are a privilege. And therefore, the state can go and give it, and they can go and take it away at
They
any
do it
time.
right now anyway.
Huh?
The state has that privilege.
They do. You're
So,
absolutely right.
That's why I said it's not an inalienable God-given right.
Yeah, and I disagree. I believe it is an inalienable right from our God. It's too bad that we have evolved to the point where that's even in question. But you're right. What we have now, inalienable rights, are not a topic of discussion in this meeting or any level in government. And I don't even think that the majority of citizens are aware of what an inalienable right is. It's not taught in public education. My kids didn't have a clue. I didn't have a clue until I was an adult. If we focused on inalienable rights, on private property rights, on the proper role of government, as Commissioner Ivey so eloquently discussed, I think we would realize that although the state allows us to be more strict in our regulations and to adopt more and more and more, as you so Wazzy pointed out, I don't think it's to our benefit. And I think if we focused on the golden rule, which overrides everything, right? The Constitution of the U.S. and the Constitution of Utah, we would realize that pretty much everything we've done here and everything all the commissioners have done in the past have just added and added and added and made it harder for free enterprise and liberty and competition in free markets. And thank you very much. And I know if you go back and you go ahead and study that, you'll realize that it's true, and you'll become an advocate and defender of private property.
Oh, no,
rights.
I believe
Yeah.
we should be defending. All I'm saying is that right now where they take them away, it's not a God-given inalienable right. It's exactly like the healthcare debate in our country today. That's how it is perceived.
It sure seems that way, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah. So hopefully we can be different and we can set the path and the example for other people to follow. Thank you very much for your time. I really enjoyed your discussion.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, we'll move into our closed meetings. Thank you. Hey, you know what? We got that TV outside.
Yeah, that
And
she
it
keeps
never-
running, yeah.